Hello, UH. My name is Nayoka Edwards, Diversity Education Coordinator with the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. Thank you for listening to Connect, a cultural podcast sponsored by CDI. Connect provides UH students, such as yourself, with the opportunity to be bold and be heard by amplifying your voices to share your cultural stories and experiences. Today, we are joined by three lovely students who will be discussing interracial dating and sharing their own experiences. Let's start off with introductions.
Hello, my name is Sarah. I am a sophomore. I identify as a black straight female. I have been in an interracial relationship for 1 year and 1 month. I am eager to be participating in this conversation today.
Hi, my name's Audrey. I'm a junior, and I am a white, cisgender, straight female, and I've been in an interracial relationship for over 3.5 years now, and I'm just really grateful to be able to participate in this conversation.
Hi, my name is Simran. I'm a senior. I identify as a Pakistani female that is heterosexual. I have been in an interracial relationship for 2 years now, and I am eager to participate in this conversation.
Great. Well, I'm excited to have y'all be here and share your stories and be bold and be heard. So there's no better way to start off this conversation but by looking at the history of interracial dating or marriage in the United States. So some facts. In 1958, 24 states in the United States had laws that prohibited marriage between people of different races. In June 1963, the Supreme Court ruled in the ruling of Lovin versus Virginia, deemed that laws prohibiting interracial marriages were unconstitutional, which was a landmark civil rights decision in the United States. And the last law officially prohibiting interracial marriage was repealed in Alabama in 2000. So, knowing that and also thinking about the Lovins versus Virginia, where the Lovins was an interracial couple where the wife Mildred was a black woman and the husband Richard was white, they decided to go to Washington, D.C., and so this was back in the 50s, the late 50s, and they got married. And then they moved back home to Virginia. And when they came back home, the wife got arrested. And she faced a year in prison just because she got married to someone she loved. And they were also of different racial backgrounds. So the couple ended up having to relocate to D.C. because they didn't want the wife to go to prison. But they eventually went to the American Civil Liberties Union to fight for their right to marry whoever they want to, but also to be able to live where they want to, too, as a couple. So hearing this and knowing how shocking it is that the Lovin versus Virginia was 50 years ago, or the law in Alabama was only 18 years ago, what are your reactions?
Well, of course, it's a little jarring to think about how closely it is in time that the world was like that. That if I were to hop back in time only 50 years, I wouldn't be able to participate in the relationship that I'm in right now. Mm-hmm. And it's scary.
Yeah.
No, it's really, it's kind of mind-boggling that we're still, so it's not been 1,000 years, it's been 50. It's been so short, and you wish it wasn't because, like you said, it's scary. You don't want to think about, how things were not even 20 years ago. It's you want things to be the way you want, but just because the past is so recent, it's not something that, a lot of people are, comfortable with, and it's just not, it's not progressive.
Yeah, it's still something that piques a lot of interest in people and conversation because, like you guys said, it wasn't that long ago. So it really does affect people who are in interracial relationships right now, or who have parents who are in interracial relationships. So that's something that it will affect us. That'll affect other people and their relationships because there's some people who frown upon it, and we are why what does it have to do with anything? But progress is progress, and we are here because we're able to. So yeah, it's great.
It's great that we at least are here where we are today. Just the difference 10 years can make, and adding on the way you said.
Yeah, that's true. The difference that 10 years can make. But putting yourself in their shoes and maybe going back to time 50 years if you had to live in that time. If you were the Lovins, would you have stayed, leave, or even got a divorce? What would you have done?
I personally think I would have gotten a divorce because I know that I personally am not bigger than the entire system, but at the same time, you have to be that one single change in order to have a ripple effect. But in my personal relationship, we have an understanding that marriage is just an institution to show the government and people around you that you love each other, and we don't need that in order for us to know that we love each other. It would be a nice thing. It's a privilege. It's a privilege at this time, but it's a right for everyone. So, I mean, would it be worth, like, dismantling our love?
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, is it worth it? Because I feel like I probably would have stayed married, but I probably would have stayed in the state where it was, like, safe to do it. I don't know if I necessarily would have, like, fought to go back home, but, like, just being with that person, I think would have been enough for me to, like, be happy with.
Yeah, I mean, I hate when people tell me what to do, especially if it's like, especially if it's out of line and it doesn't really warrant my best interest. If someone's telling me who to be with, despite their great personality or what they can give back to me or to the world, like that's out of line, and I don't think that I would be able to put up with it. I think I would have to speak up, just like they did. I think that just like Sarah said, you have to start with the man in the mirror. So I definitely would have probably said something about it and not just moved.
So different takes. Some people would have got a divorce but still stay with their partner because love is love, and some people would have just moved back to DC like they did, but then at the same time, like, fight for what you believe in, right? Which is something that they did, and because of that one thing, then a ripple effect where interracial marriages are now seen as more acceptable, and there aren't laws that prohibit people from marrying who they want to marry. And so bringing this conversation back to present tense, more like 2017, in 2017, the world tuned in to watch the thriller Get Out, written and directed by Jordan Peele. While Get Out tackled what some, or I would call, liberal racism in modern America, at the center of the movie was the interracial relationship of the main two characters, Chris and Rose, a relationship that I believe set the foundation for the whole movie. So, did y'all all see that movie?
Yes.
And did y'all go and see it with your partner?
I saw it with my boyfriend, who was a black male, so it was very interesting going to see that movie with him, yes.
What was that experience like?
So, like, we chose to see it because, it's like we're open. We are completely understanding of each other and, like, who we are as people. But when we went to go see it, it was very, like, enlightening because, like, Jordan Peele, like, does not hide anything. Like, the first scene with when they're talking to the cops, and the cop is like, let me see your ID to Chris. And Rose is like, no, you don't need to do any of that. Him and I have experienced that before, so that was, like, really impacting. I've dealt when we were driving to Florida, an Alabama cop pulls over for no reason just to talk to him. And it triggered me because it was like I understand that personally, and Jordan Peele is showing you that this is real, like, this happens, couples deal with this. And I think that it's like the world needs to know that does happen to interracial couples, that happens to people. And he said, at the end of the movie, Chris gets away with his friend, right? His friend saves him. But he said he had almost made the movie end a different way because of the racial injustice with cops, and how he was about to have it end to where, the cops pull up and there's a dead man in the street and Chris is there, and Chris is a black male. And he said he almost had it end where Chris was the one arrested. And I think that was, like, that's what, like, we said the scenes with the cops were what upset me and my boyfriend the most, because it was, like, it was real.
Yeah, firsthand experience of, like, seeing that and, like, knowing that other people go through that, but then, like, I can't imagine to live through that.
Yeah, no, exactly.
What was y'all reaction to the movie?
I saw it by myself. Me and my boyfriend have not gotten together yet. It was so, like, I can't even describe it. It was funny. It was shocking. It was suspenseful. And if there was a word to describe that, that's just all I felt the whole time. Like, when you're, like, on the floor, like, oh my God, like, I can't believe
What is happening?
Absolutely. And I was like, okay, I understand this political statement. I understand Jordan Peele as, a writer, as a comedian, and he himself is, I think he's biracial, right? Yeah,
I believe so.
If not, he's mixed, and that's like, you know, the whole, like, a part of the conversation, that people are condemning something that literally is the basis of someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am these both two things, and you say you don't agree with it, but so you don't agree with who I am as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think that's kind of why he felt so passionately about that.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to, you brought up a great points, Sarah, just also like the identity of Jordan Peele, the person who wrote and directed the movie, and he's also a part of an interracial marriage, so that's even unique. And so going back to Chris's and Rose's relationship, what were your first reactions to that? Like, in the beginning when, you know, they were at the house getting ready to pack, were y'all like, oh, or was it like, okay?
I thought it was, like, cute in the beginning, but because I knew what it was about, I just felt bad the whole time, because I'm sitting over here like, okay, well, I'm kind of like Rose, and my boyfriend's kind of like Chris, and I know where this is going. So it was like, the whole time I was like, oh, no, because it was just like, it made me feel bad, because this is what, like, it was being, you know, portrayed as. But no, I thought overall it was a great movie, but watching it from my perspective, I felt a lot of guilt just watching it, because that's how some people, you don't want people to see interracial relationships in a negative way. And like, I appreciate Jordan Peele bringing light to it, but at the end of the day, you still can't you still kind of feel bad that it has a little bit of like a negative too.
Yeah. And when you say from your perspective, you're talking about as a white woman who's a part of a...
Yeah, as a white woman, a part of a interracial relationship, you're like, okay, they're portraying the crazy white family. Like, I don't want people to like think that. Like, that's not, like, my family's the most like accepting family. I'm the most like non-judgmental accepting person. Like, I don't care, but it's like, that's not how the world is still. The world is still barely like progressing to that point of non-judgment. So
and unfortunately, sometimes because there's still racism that exists in the world, and people who still discriminate others because of their skin color, or prejudice, or all these things, that's why, you know, people automatically judge other people because of their color. Like, you know, my experience with this specific group has not been really good. You know, I've been discriminated against by these people, or these people have power and privilege because of their race compared to what my identities are. So that sometimes cause them to easily judge, and not give someone a fair shot. That's a good point. So, but I do want to bring this up. There's a part in the movie, I believe it was in the beginning, when Chris and Rose is packing, getting ready to go visit her parents. And then he was like, he finds out that she didn't tell her parents that he was black. And her response to that was, they're not racist. I would have told you. Or fast forwarding, when they get to the house, they go in, he meets the parents, they're happy to meet him, and the dad says, I would have voted for Obama a third time. So, in y'all experiences, have you known anyone who's been in an interracial relationship where they had a partner whose family or friends, you know, really tried hard to prove that they weren't racist, or really tried hard to prove that they weren't prejudiced? Has anyone had that experience or seen that happen?
I don't want to say that, like, my own family is like are full of racists, but they are against my interracial couple or my interracial relationship. So it's not like they go and like say really bad things about him or about my boyfriend or just couples in general. But they do make it seem like everybody who's kind of like born into a culture is going to end up dating and marrying that person in the culture, and that's how it should be. And I feel like I try to say something to my mom. She's like, no, I'm not racist, but she'll just call my boyfriend sometimes like the Asian one, and I'm like,
so it's like that underlying, like, you know, it's
yeah, you like, I know I know she's thinking it all the time, or somebody else is thinking it. If they see me and my boyfriend, I know that they're thinking it, but they're probably, I'm not racist. I'm just like,
Question.
But do you think that sometimes that might be just a lack of awareness, or like that cultural competence, like they don't know, or they don't have that understanding, or do you what do you think those intentions are?
Yeah, they were definitely born into a time where they did just marry, somebody in the like within the family. The family knew a family friend, and they would marry from that, or they all were immigrants and they came from the same country, so that's like something different. And then my other sisters who are also in interracial couples, or in interracial relationships. I don't know if you've seen couples. They're both in interracial relationships, and it was never really a problem. But then mine had to do with also like religion was different, so that's also I don't know if any of you guys have different religions from y'all's significant other, but that was also an underlying issue too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
No, I definitely agree. Like sometimes, like parents, like our parents' generation, have like very conservative values of like whatever their culture is like made of, and like they push that onto us, and we may not necessarily have the same views, but like we're a different generation. Like everything is completely different for us than it was for you when you were growing up in your time period. So I feel like they just like they literally just can't relate, and they're not open minded, and they don't understand like what we're going through is different than when they were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, like, the thing is like, anytime someone realizes, like, I'm not dating, like, someone of my same race, the immediate thing they always go to is, like, your kids are going to be so cute. And I'm like, if I had $1 for every time someone said that, it's just, like, yeah, like, I get it, but, like, I'm just happy with my kid. Like, I'm not focusing on that, but that's usually what people say to, like, start the conversation. And, like, yeah, I get it's a compliment, but it feels kind of like that. I would have voted for Obama, like, that. Trying to relatable term, like, oh, I love interracial kids. Your babies are gonna be so cute, and it's like, thanks, but like
trying to say that they have to say something positive.
Yeah, they have to
it.
like say something to like associate themselves with it, and you're like, I'm like, you don't even need to say that.
It shouldn't
like,
even be a question. Like if you introduce your significant other as a different culture, or they just happen to like have a different face, then it shouldn't be like, oh, he's black.
Yeah.
You're gonna have the cutest mix.
I know
babies.
it's every time if I had $1, I'd be rich. But it's like it's just I don't think people like know like that it's not like totally appropriate, because you wouldn't do that if I was dating someone of my same race. You wouldn't have said anything.
Yeah.
Why do you say it if it's someone of a different race? I think that's like where my concern is. It's like, why is your response different based upon
Who you're with.
who I'm with, So
That's interesting. You brought up a really great point about the fact that your parents this is totally a different time than them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that sense of newness. But my question is, are there any steps you've taken to kind of like talk to your parents about being in this relationship, or to kind of like, yeah, this is new or different from what you've had, but this is why it's important to me? Have y'all had those conversations?
Yes. To go in depth on that, like ever since I was younger, my dad had a great way of saying that he didn't want me to be in any sort of interracial relationship, and I didn't appreciate the way he put it, and I'm not gonna like say how he put it because it's completely inappropriate. But as soon as I started dating my boyfriend and they met, and I like told my mom about him, they were extremely open, because like I don't think they want to like actually be like, no, you can't date this person because of what they look like. They just want them to be good for me. So I mean, like, they got these prejudices because my parents are a little bit older, they're in their 60s, and they lived that prejudice. They lived that racism, and they don't want me to like be held down by somebody who's like trying to oppress me or something like that. Yeah. But they know that he isn't that way. So
I feel like for me, like, it was like I'd say like one side of like my parents is like a little conservative. So initially when I was dating this person at the beginning, I could tell they were like kind of hesitant, just because I feel like they wanted me to be with a specific type of partner in my life, and I didn't really appreciate it. But it was like over time when they got to know him, like they love him, like they call each other like mom, dad, son, like whatever. Like it's so close now, but it's like they only got to know him as a person because I'm dating him. And I think that's like that barrier, because it's like, why is it you only have to know him as a person to like him? You should like him no matter what. Yeah. But it's like, I appreciate now that everyone loves each other, but it's like I kind of wish like off the bat it would have been like more
there weren't
accepting.
those like social barriers, or like those like those thoughts of like just trying to build a relationship instead of taking that like time. Like you didn't want them to like have to prove that they loved you or care about you, just for your parents to be open-minded to the idea of being with them.
Exactly.
My boyfriend and I, basically hid our relationship for 2 years. Because in Pakistani culture, you only introduce your boyfriend if one day he'll be your fiance as well. So it's just not precedent for you to do that. So I this past summer eventually had just I needed to make it fair for my boyfriend and just go up to him and be like, I'm going to introduce you to my family now. It's not like fair that I'm kept in the dark, or that I'm keeping him in the dark by hanging out with his family all the time. So this past summer I brought it up to my mom and my sisters, who we have a huge age gap, so they're all part of the same generation and I'm not. And I told them that I'm no longer really asking for permission. I really would like the support, and just because I think this is going to be very long term, and I would like them to be part of it, and not have to hide it from them anymore. But at this point, I'm not asking them to do anything or allow me to do it. And I've always spoken up for him ever since I told them if they say anything bad or negative, then I always stand up for him. But just in general, my family, I've always stood up for a lot of different races and a lot of different empathetic situations. I just learn to have more empathy and empathize with people of all cultures and all races and all different backgrounds.
Yeah, but I can imagine, I can't say from firsthand experience how difficult it can be to just be in a relationship where you might always feel like you have to defend it, or you always feel like you have to advocate just to be in something that for some people is just natural or is just more accepted, because it's just like, oh, look at that black couple, or look at that white couple, where it's like, oh, look at what are her motives for being with him, or why did he choose that person, or why are they
it's
together?
Completely different when you see two different. It's like, why is it different then? That's it's breaking that stigma.
I also hear of other within that race, the opposite sex will be mad at somebody else for going after a different race. So I'll be on Twitter and somebody will be like, oh, why did that guy have to choose a white girl? Something like that.
I had to log off of social media because I was getting so overwhelmed with negative comments towards interracial couples. It was affecting me. It was like, why are they together? She doesn't deserve him. She shouldn't be dating him. She needs to date her own kind. And it's like, what the hell? We're in 2018.
On the same stuff.
It makes me so mad. I logged off of Twitter. I'm not even on Twitter anymore.
Yeah.
Sarah, I saw you shaking your head it sounds like you can relate.
You get those nasty comments from people you think are your friends.
Uh-huh.
Somebody who was my closest friend, she said to me, oh, I don't think that black women should be with white men because of slavery and all that stuff. And I was like,
oh my god.
Okay, so he was a slaver? So he owns me now? Oh, I don't think so.
She's living more in the past than anyone by saying
Absolutely.
that.
And her mother said the same thing to me. And I told my mom about it. She was like, they're completely wrong. Do not listen to them. And I was like, you're right. That's completely right. And it just disgusted me that somebody who's supposed to be my friend supporting me would say something like that. And I was just like,
wow.
And I think of course, those feelings are valid, and I think sometimes with it, when we have these situations, how do we approach it? And I think oftentimes just the history, again, with what this country has faced in terms of racism and in terms of discrimination and prejudice, and not just when we think about interracial couples, it's not just someone who's black or someone who's white, or it's not just couples who are heterosexuals. And so I think just for some people who might not be a part of it or have not had that experience of being a part of an interracial coupling, they just don't understand it because they're like, we've had this history with this group, or this has been the experience of our ancestors. And so it's kind of harder for them to understand or even be aware or accept. And then sometimes people don't want to understand or be accepting of it. And so we talked a little bit about, did you have conversation with your parents? But before getting into your relationships, officially, did you and your partner sit down and have a discussion?
We didn't necessarily have a discussion about our races before we started dating. It was more natural. And then, I met his mom, and his mom is Filipino and white, and I saw that he was, more white, and I was like, oh, wow, your heritage is really cool. He's like, yeah, I'm all these different things, but, I'm mostly white. And obviously, I was, I'm just black, and he assumed that, and it wasn't ever, an issue. It was just more of, stating what it was.
Yeah. What about y'all? Did y'all have any specific questions? Was there a conversation about your cultural differences?
For me, there was like nothing. It was just like dating someone regularly, but it was like, I mean, because for him and I, it was like the end of my junior year. We were like best friends. Like he would tell everyone he was my girlfriend, but I wasn't. And then my end of junior year, he finally did ask me out, and so that was really cute for me because it was just like we've been best friends, and but for everyone else in the school, it was like, oh my god, they're dating interracial. Oh my god, it's like shut up, like shut up, like it's not that big of a deal. So it's like it's more of like having to explain to everyone else and have to talk about it with your partner because everyone else is so like concerned about it, you know. But for me, I didn't have to. We never talked about it.
I guess my case is a little different because I'm a Pakistani Muslim, so in Islam it's just a little bit more strict on who you are with, and we think like really into the long term, like you date to marry. So when I first met my boyfriend, I actually remember I was buying Drake tickets for like 4 months later with my friend, and she was like, "Do you want to invite David?" And I'm like, "No, we're not going to be together at that point," because I was just thinking, I was like, "Oh, I just met an Asian guy, like I'm probably not going to be with him." And she was like, "Don't say that, you curse your own words." And 2 years later, here we are. But in between, we broke up twice because of cultural differences. Not on his side. Like, I had met his family right away, right at the beginning. They were super accepting. But I knew that maybe my family wouldn't be as accepting, and it would be something detrimental to my relationship with my family if I had brought him home. So we broke up twice, and both times he just made it seem as if he was adapting to my culture and my religion and my family values, and he really took into consideration everything that my family looks for in a guy, as well as what I look for in a guy, and what we would want our future family to look like. We think like super in the long term, just because I guess we love each other so much. And so we got past those 2 breakups, and they were like, not even breakups, like 1 week breaks.
That's a break.
Yeah. It's like a whole Rachel and Ross thing. But here we are, and you're past all of that, and he's met my family, and I've met his, and we participate in each other's cultural values and all of that.
Oh.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
So kind of thinking about it, and we kind of sort of talked about this, but were there any moments where you felt uncertain about being in your interracial relationship because you were nervous about receiving any type of backlash, or just because it was just unknown cultural differences? You didn't really know, am I going to offend him or her or their family? Were there ever any moments of uncertainty?
No, because my boyfriend's family is so open and like accepting and generous and nice. So that was never really a question for like on my side. And then for him meeting my family, like they just wanted to know who he was and just like, is he cool? And they're like, all right, that's like all we need to know. And I think they all do like him. There was no like is there some unsteady water or something? Yeah.
And for you, you were just sure. You're like, this is who I want to be with. And
yeah, I was like, this is my guy.
Can you repeat the question again for me?
Sure. Was there ever any moments of uncertainty about being in an interracial relationship due to just fear of receiving any backlash, or just because there are unknown cultural differences? You weren't sure if you might say anything that might be offensive or do something that might be offensive, or they might offend you in your culture.
Yeah. So, like, him and I are pretty open with each other. Like, there's never anything we can say to, like, really offend each other. Like, we are, accepting of who we are. But I think him and I have never experienced anything personally that's, like, affected us. I think the only thing that does suck is, like, when we go out in public, sometimes people will, like, stare hardcore. And it kind of makes us feel really, like, insignificant. Like, it makes me feel, like, small and, like, helpless because people are just, like, staring at us and judging us. And that's the only thing is, like, sometimes we just don't even want to go out because, like, there's literally been times where we're like, we don't want to go out tonight because, like, we don't want to have to deal with shit. Like, we don't have to want to deal with any type of, like, negative, like, looks from people judging you. And it's, like, you shouldn't even have to deal with that going out. No matter who you're dating, you shouldn't have to worry about going out and being perceived negatively by people in public.
And then for me, it's just, like, basically my family again. Like, everything's about family with us. So it's his family and my family and how they're going to eventually converse, and that's, like, a problem. But there's nothing that's really kept me away from him or vice versa.
And so I was doing a little I was looking up some stuff as I was preparing for this episode, and I came across this quote in an article, and it said, "The truth is dating, marrying, or even having a child with someone of a different race doesn't mean that you automatically understand their experiences or even that you're less likely to have prejudice." What are your reactions to that quote?
The best we can do is like share our own experiences and really listen to their experiences, become more empathetic towards that, towards their like life situation. And then should you have kids, like same thing, you just have to think of them and like now they're a child that you've put into the world, biracial, and like what type of experiences they're going to have into the world and like how you can kind of like prepare them for that. And you know, again, just be empathetic towards everyone around you.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really great point about the fact that, you know, you can never understand, and whether you're with someone who's of the same race as you, right, there's still cultural differences within that, whether that's sexual orientation or whether that's gender identity, ethnicity, or family upbringing. There's always still those differences that you're never going to fully understand or be able to say, I have experienced someone else's story, because everyone's path is different. And so just to kind of wrap it up, what do you want people to know about what it's like being in an interracial relationship in 2018?
I want people to know that it's like nothing different at all, but at the same time, it's nothing the same, because being in a relationship where you have the same cultural background, you already know kind of like what their lives were kind of molded like, you know, like how you have friends that are the same race as you. You know, like, pretty much what's going on in their life because they're going through the same paths as you. And when you're in a relationship where you're different that way, it's so much more complex, and the way that they see things and the types of values that they have will somewhat align with yours, but at the same time will be drastically different from anything that you can ever conceive. And it's exciting. It's completely exciting, and you know that you are creating a new type of energy into the world. One that is positive and one that will bring only good things.
Definitely. I mean, for me, it's the best thing because I'm with the person I love, and I think that that's like where the emphasis should be, is that if people were more open-minded and more accepting, like, there would be more love in the world. And I feel like for me, like, yes, there's like the negatives and the downsides and the everyday things that, you know, we have to deal with, but it's like you're able to be with your person. Like we said, 50 years ago I couldn't be with them, so I'm grateful that in 2018 I am able to be with them with a few little things here and there. But overall, I'm looking forward to the progressiveness that we're making as a culture, and like the United States, you know, a little bit behind than everyone else, but like we're getting there. We're becoming a little more accepting, and even it's like a little bit by bit, like we said in the beginning, 10 years ago would have been a lot different. 10 years from now, hopefully it's a lot different, and that's where I hope to keep seeing it go.
I'd say it's pretty damn great. Go ahead and get out of your comfort zones and really like be able to be with a person based on what they're bringing to the table, who they are as a person, not where they've come from or how they were brought up. I think that, you know, I get to eat twice the amount of great foods, 2 cultures. I get a lot of different outlook on the life. I'm gonna have some cute exotic babies. You have really no reason to not go out there and like just judge someone, whether they are like from a different country or they just like have a different background than you. Like you just really, that's just not gonna affect you and your everyday life. Like there's just no point in negating all of that just because like of a race. It's just not worth it.
It sounds like what y'all are saying is that love just wins, right?
Yes,
so it's like you get
wins.
to find your special person, you get to experience a different culture other than your own, and you just want to be able to love who you want to love.
Be with who you love. Like that's it. Like that's what you should be looking for.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I love that there are like these big smiles in all your faces as you're answering this.
Just like thinking about our boyfriends.
Well, that is all we have for you today, UH. Special thank you to our guests for participating in this conversation, and a big thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Be sure to tune in next month for episode 2, I Am More Than. But until then, check us out on social media, UHCDI on Instagram and Facebook, and UH_CDI on Twitter. Until next time, UH, stay bold and be heard.